In law enforcement, only one thing is certain.
He's shooting at the deputy.
You never know what can happen.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
On any given day, at any given moment, chaos is just around the corner. Life and death separated by fractions of a second. Or a split-second decision. And sometimes there's only one chance to get it right. The dashboard camera is our witness.
I'm talking to the driver.
Caught on camera. Dashcam Diaries. Hello, I'm Contessa Brewer. Welcome to Caught on Camera. Police dashboard cameras capture the ultimate reality show. Vivid stories of life and death, pursuit and rescue. The dashcam dramas in this hour feature a fleeing killer, a suicidal mom, an out-of-control semi, and a host of officers willing to risk everything to keep citizens safe. A 6-hour manhunt for a killer on the run comes to a dramatic end at the Montana-Idaho border. It's the morning of June 14th, 2003. Earlier, over the radio, Deputy Sheriff David Conway gets word that an officer has been shot.
Affirmative, Ravalli County officer is down.
Conway races toward the scene when suddenly a gold Ford Taurus crosses 3 lanes of traffic, nearly running him off the road.
He tried to ram me. If somebody gets a chance, take him out.
Inside the Ford Taurus is George Davis. He's not only shot an officer, he's killed a man and left 6 others wounded the night before near a bar in Ennis, Montana. Michael Carroll was there.
He had ran up a tab of 12 or 14 drinks and didn't have the funds to pay for it. It seemed like he was getting very, not just upset, but just like distraught about the whole issue of it.
Carroll says he paid Davis bar tab, hoping he would leave. Davis does leave the bar, but he shows up outside moments later and suddenly opens fire. One of Carroll's friends is shot and killed crossing the street. George Davis then turns his gun on Michael Carroll.
George Davis was in front of me. He raised the gun up and looked at me and kind of, with almost like black piercing eyes, seemed to like look right through me. I started to turn around and I was kind of squatched over, and he shot me, and the bullet had gone into right above my belly button.
Luckily, someone pulls Carroll back inside the bar before Davis can shoot him again. But Carroll's girlfriend at the time is still outside, and Davis shoots her in the hip. Soon after, he goes back to his car and drives off. Davis drives through the Montana night. The next morning, Ravalli County Deputy Bernie Alstad pulls him over for speeding. But before the deputy can get out of the car, Davis attacks, shooting up his vehicle. Alstad is wounded, and Davis is also hit, but he gets away. That's when Deputy Conway gets the call that an officer is down, and he's nearly run off the road. Montana Trooper Jason Hildenstab joins Conway in the chase. He's working an extra shift and just clocked in, so he's low on gas.
That was going to be my first order of business, to go get my car filled up, and knowing that I was going to be in a long, high-speed pursuit in a matter of minutes.
But there's no time to lose, and before he knows it, Hildenstab is chasing George Davis at speeds reaching 120 miles per hour.
My low fuel light has come on. I am going to run out pretty soon.
Hildenstab is running on empty, and Conway can't keep up with Davis.
411, you intentionally this far back, or are you not have the power? I'm just not having the power.
Hildenstab takes the lead in the pursuit and edges closer to Davis, getting a better look at the suspect.
He was looking up in his rearview mirror at me. I could see him doing that. He was kind of giving me the eyeball, and at one point he was combing his hair. During the pursuit, I was pretty stunned that he was that focused and not that relaxed. He had just been in a gunfight.
Suddenly, driving more than 100 miles an hour, Davis slams on his brakes, then maneuvers to face Officer Hildenstab. Davis takes cover and then steadily aims his .45 automatic at Hildenstab.
When someone's shooting at you at that close, the muzzle looks like it's pointed right at your head, and it was surprising after each round he fired, I felt I'd be hit.
Hildenstab takes cover behind his vehicle and he avoids Davis's fire. Deputy Conway arrives on the scene, but just as the two officers engage Davis, he jumps back in his car and speeds away. Hildenstab's car is riddled with bullets and inoperable, so he jumps in Conway's car to continue the pursuit.
Multiple shots fired. Suspect is now moving again westbound. Highway 12 from 1-9.
Davis drives completely out of sight, but there's a backup plan in motion.
440 is going to set up spikes at 113.
Conway wants spikes to be set up down the road to deflate Davis's tires. By this point, the chase has almost reached the state line.
Does Idaho have anyone in the area?
Up ahead, an Idaho State policeman lays down the spikes with seconds to spare.
They're coming! Watch out!
Davis runs over the spikes. Air escapes rapidly from his tires, and he's slowing down.
Come on, marker 2. He's sitting.
But George Davis is not about to give up. Somehow, he maneuvers his disabled vehicle to face his pursuers.
I heard our engine rev up, and I knew Deputy Conway decided, I knew what he was going to do. He didn't announce it to me, but I could tell that he was going to ram him.
Conway rams the Ford Taurus at close to 60 miles an hour. With the officers speeding toward him, Davis actually opens his door so he can get a clearer shot. But he misses. As the smoke clears, Deputy Conway's okay, but Hildenstab, whose seatbelt is broken, is thrown into the windshield.
It had blinded me. When I tried to open my eyes, I had all kinds of glass shards and stuff in my eyes.
Stay down!
Hildenstab's leg is broken, and he's writhing in pain on the ground. The Idaho policeman drags him behind Conway's car to take cover.
Stay down now! Stay down! Right here! Right here! Stay down! Put your hands outside the door! Right now! Put that left hand outside the door!
Amazingly, Davis's gun, which was thrown upwards from the impact of the collision, has landed back in his car.
You could see later, and looking at the videotapes, that he was trying to retrieve the gun again. He hadn't given up the fight yet.
But Davis has run out of luck. He has gunshot wounds and an injured back, and he's going nowhere.
Keep your hands up!
The Idaho policeman handcuffs Davis and pulls him out of the vehicle. Still conscious, Davis strikes up a conversation.
I don't know. What's it fun to you? What a rush, huh? I wish we would have killed you. Well,
Hildenstab is still nursing his broken leg, but he says his pain is overtaken by the intense emotion of knowing he's helped capture George Davis.
I was just so, probably an exhilaration I'll never feel in my life again. You know, I was happy. I mean, it was just a great feeling. And it seemed like at the time one of the happiest moments in my life. I had got this guy stopped, and I survived it.
As Davis's shooting spree comes to an end, one of his victims, Michael Carroll, is struggling to survive.
My son, he had just turned 5 2 days ago. Like, he could not have a dad all of a sudden. Like, that was a really powerful thing for me.
To everyone's surprise, Carroll pulls through, as do the 5 others who survived the shooting in Ennis. But there's a long road to recovery for Carroll.
Getting shot was easy. Like, the really hard part was recovering.
Before the shooting, Carroll weighs 165 pounds. After his recovery, he's down to 112, and his rage is overwhelming.
The more I sat there and dwelt and hated him, even though he was in a small little jail cell and I was out in the open, it was still giving him the power over me.
On the day the 46-year-old Davis is sentenced to life in prison without parole, Carol confronts him in the courtroom.
Made sure to tell him that if he had all thought like he had done anything to hurt the people in this town, like it had the opposite effect. It was amazing how much it brought this town together and united people.
The people of Ennis, Montana rally around Carol with boundless support, even offering him free medical care. Carol and his son are closer than ever, and they don't have to worry about George Davis.
It would be a much different feeling knowing that he was out and not caught. So I'm very thankful for that. I mean, the jobs that a cop has to do every day, it's amazing. I have a lot of respect for what they do.
Coming up, an epic collision. An ambulance pulled over.
You better get back in that ambulance. I'm talking to the driver.
And a miracle on a bridge. When caught on camera, Dashcam Diaries continues. A state trooper lunges after a suicidal bridge jumper, saving the mother of two in the nick of time. The clear, sunny morning could easily have been her last.
It was just hold on to that arm, don't let it go.
July 19th, 2004, Green Bay, Wisconsin. Trooper Les Bolt hears about a frantic husband calling 911. The man is following his wife, who he thinks is suicidal.
There's a suicidal female subject's husband is on the line with us.
But the call for help won't be easy to answer. Before law enforcement can do anything to help her, they will have to catch up to her. She's traveling in excess of 90 miles an hour.
There's always a little bit of delay from the time that the dispatcher gets the call, and then they can relay it out to the cars on the road.
Also on the lookout for the suicidal driver is Sergeant Bill Morgan of the Brown County Sheriff's Department.
We knew we were looking for a white Oldsmobile and that the husband was following in a Dodge Durango. So I set up cars on the Highway 29, hoping we could intercept her.
Even with multiple officers on the road, Bolt believes the chances of catching up with the desperate woman are slim. But luck is on his side. After just a few minutes, Bolt thinks he spots the white Oldsmobile.
I was kind of actually surprised that, there's a vehicle in front of me. I didn't know for sure if it was her, but the car was moving at a high rate of speed, passing other traffic.
Trooper Bolt flicks on his lights and chases after the driver, whose speed reaches 120 miles per hour. Other drivers move out of the way of those two speeding cars.
Passed a couple vehicles on the ramp, and then I was finally able to catch up to it on I-43, where it proceeded at high speeds up onto the top of the bridge.
The driver heads onto Tower Drive Bridge, rising 130 feet above the Fox River. In the middle of the bridge, she pulls over. Bolt has an uneasy feeling.
I didn't know what, her thoughts were, being possible suicidal subject. I didn't know what she might have in her hands or what she would be doing.
The driver immediately exits the car.
She turned away from me like I wasn't even there and headed towards the side of the bridge. I was already out of my vehicle, so I made the decision to try and cut her off before she got to the edge.
But before Bolt can reach the woman, she jumps.
I couldn't see either of them, and I looked over and I saw Les was looking over the side of the bridge, I thought. I radioed our dispatch center and I said, I think she jumped.
She jumped.
But then a miracle unfolds.
No, hold on to board.
Next thing I look over and I see Les pulling an arm up. I could see he had a hold of her hand. So I yelled into the mic, he's got a hand.
The woman's fall is broken by a beam that runs along the outer edge of the bridge. It gives Trooper Bolt one last chance to grab onto her and save her life.
I was able to get a hold of her arm, keep her there, and then just wait. There was no way I was getting her over the wall by myself. I wasn't going to try and readjust the grip.
Together with a third officer, Deputy Kevin Kennard, Les Bolt, and Sergeant Bill Morgan are able to pull the woman to safety.
She was what I've always called giving us the 1,000-yard stare. And to me, that's where someone doesn't see anything going on around them. They're just looking 1,000 yards away.
The suicidal woman is Tina Zahn, who's experiencing postpartum depression after the birth of her second child.
I remember just being in the house and just feeling numb. I was just numb. The statistics show that postpartum depression it reaches its height 90 days after the birth of a baby. And we almost hit it to the day. We were like 3 days off.
Tina's depression is so deep, her husband had asked Tina's mother to help look after her.
Apparently I was talking about jumping. I don't remember talking about jumping. Apparently they were trying to keep the car keys away from me.
According to Tina, on that July morning, her mother lost patience with her for not being able to get over her depression. It was too much for Tina to handle.
I snapped and I lost all hope, and I saw the car keys laying over by the refrigerator on the counter. I grabbed them, I ran out the door.
But before Tina drives away, her 6-year-old daughter pleads with her.
She came out of the house and she saw me in the car, and she's banging on my window. And she's banging on there saying, "Mommy, Mommy, take me with you, take me with you." And I backed out. I just took the car and I just went as fast as I could.
Her mother alerts Tina's husband. His distraught wife has taken off in the car. Tina's determined to drive to the bridge, get out, and jump. She says she can't recall much of that harrowing journey.
The next memory I have is being on Highway 29 coming into Green Bay. And I see my husband, and he's coming at me. And I do see him go through the grassy median.
Tina is so filled with despair, she keeps driving, despite the lights and sirens, completely focused on getting to the bridge.
I remember pulling up and pulling over to the side of the bridge, and that's it.
The efforts of Green Bay law enforcement stopped Tina from taking her own life.
God reached out of the heavens and kind of said, "It's not your time yet. Sorry."
If Trooper Bolt had been one step slower, Tina says her life would have been over.
His whole body is over, and he just is hanging out with one leg by the barrier, and the other leg goes up in the air. So, microseconds.
The call was very, very close. I mean, split second anywhere, and she would have, succeeded in what she was trying to do.
Tina has written a book called Why I Jumped to help others struggling with depression, and she speaks publicly about her ordeal.
I wasn't even thinking of my children. I just was thinking, there's no hope.
What began on a desperate morning has grown into a supportive friendship for Tina and the officers at the bridge.
I've got to meet her children, her husband, and this was probably one of the most positive days in my whole career.
Coming up, a terrible accident and a shootout in Texas.
He's shooting at the deputy.
When caught on camera, Dash Cam Diaries continues. A gunman on the run leads a fleet of squad cars on a chase in Tyler, Texas.
He's shooting at the deputy.
That ends with one man dead. The drama begins in Tyler's Town Square at the Smith County Courthouse, where every day passions run high.
In a courthouse, whether it's New York City or Tyler, Texas, that courthouse is full of emotion, especially in the courts of divorce and child custody.
That day, February 24th, 2005, 43-year-old David Arroyo is waiting outside for his ex-wife to arrive for a child support hearing.
He had somehow blamed all the problems in life on his wife and his son.
Armed with a powerful semi-automatic rifle, he opens fire.
We have shots fired on the square. We have someone down.
Appears to be a Hispanic male. Looks like it's from the old beat.
The shooting is all caught on a courthouse surveillance camera. Arroyo on the right guns down ex-wife Maribel Estrada and one of their sons, 23-year-old David Arroyo Jr. A massive gun battle erupts between Arroyo and officers at the courthouse entrance.
We're getting shot at. We're on the way. We're trying to get the guy. Our bailiff's been shot.
Deputy Sherman Dollison, filling in as a bailiff, moves outside to confront Arroyo as he opens fire.
When you watch the video, you see that the officers are doing exactly what they're taught to do, and that's run into the gunfire to try to stop the perpetrator.
Where is he now? He's outside the back. The bailiff's outside the back door? I think he went out. He's been shot. They're going to need an ambulance.
Dollison is shot multiple times and falls to the ground outside the courthouse, critically injured. Other officers are shooting Arroyo, but he's not going down. Unknown to them at the time, he's wearing protective body armor. Still, the officers keep coming.
One was critically injured with numerous gunshots in front of the courthouse. He kept shooting. Even when he was shot numerous times, he still rose up and tried to shoot.
Outside the courthouse, Arroyo's son is shot in both legs, but still alive. As the bullets are flying, he begs his father for his life.
I said, like, before I die, we need to talk. And I was basically just trying to get him to stop, like, hold up. But I didn't even know what I was going to say. He just looked at me and goes, talk about what?
On the street, local resident Mark Wilson, a licensed gun owner, fires at Arroyo. But Arroyo turns and shoots him dead. Sheriff Smith believes Wilson may have prevented Arroyo from killing his own son.
I believe had it not been for Mark Wilson and some others and the deputies shooting back at him, that he would have killed his son. There's no doubt in my mind.
But it's too late to save Arroyo's ex-wife. She dies on the courthouse steps.
I think the last thing she was saying was I could make her out like she was praying. I was trying to talk to her and she wasn't really responding. Like she was saying like it was praying in her mind. And after that, she just went blank.
Caught on police dashboard camera, Arroyo makes his getaway in his pickup truck. Nearby, Sergeant Rusty Jacks thinks Arroyo may still be on foot, so he jumps on the hood of a squad car, hoping to catch him by surprise.
We'll take any means of transportation. We still hunt them down with from four-wheelers to horseback. It just depends on what's available at the time, and that's what Jacks did.
Get in! Yo.
A caravan of police officers joins the chase, including John Smith, a deputy sheriff at the time. Smith is surprised at how slowly Arroyo is driving for a man on the run.
It was low speed. Seemed like to me it was taunting us. You know, like he's wanting to fight.
Northbound, back overpass.
As Arroyo heads north of town, he still has his weapon at the ready.
We're still northbound, speed's 40. The barrel of the gun is still out the driver's window.
Wary of Arroyo's rifle, the fleet of squad cars keep a safe distance. But Deputy Smith decides it's time to make a move.
But I felt that I needed to engage him and put a stop to it.
Smith's car bolts past the others toward the red pickup truck, maneuvering close behind Arroyo.
All I could see was him, the shooter. I had like tunnel vision focused on him.
Arroyo picks up speed as Smith approaches, then opens fire.
He fired out the window. He tried to shoot the sheriff deputy.
Under intense fire, Smith decides to ram Arroyo's vehicle from behind and try to throw him off.
While I was shooting, I rammed his pickup truck. Because I figured, you know, he's got to drive. So he had stopped shooting. So I think he shot me like 5 times.
Suddenly, Arroyo stops his truck and gets out, aiming his rifle right at Smith.
He's shooting at the deputy.
He gets out, and I'm out of bullets, so I get out of the way.
With no ammunition, Smith is a sitting duck. But luckily, another squad car has pulled over to the right. It's Sergeant Rusty Jacks. Armed with a rifle, he shoots Arroyo from 60 feet away and kills him.
In my rearview mirror, I see him just drop. So I don't know what had happened. I didn't know if I'd hit him and it was just a delayed response. You know, I just didn't know. But his truck was still rolling, so I just did a U-turn and put my bumper on his front bumper to keep the truck from rolling.
Deputy Sherman Dollison, gravely injured at the courthouse, fights for his life in the days that follow.
I did not know if Dollison was going to live or die. It was touch and go for many days afterwards.
But Dollison pulls through, and the other officers escape with minor injuries. A few weeks later, a memorial is held to remember the victims and to honor the officers.
It was a very solemn time here in this county, and it lasted longer than a lot of the tragedies that I've seen happen. There was still a solemn attitude around the courthouse.
The courthouse still shows its scars from that day in 2005. There are bullet holes in its walls today. David Arroyo Jr. is haunted by the death of his mother.
I wish I could have done more. I hope she made it to heaven, because that's what she should be. And I'm pretty sure my dad's in hell, so he ain't gonna bother her no more.
Coming up, danger on the side of the road, and a run-in with a semi. When caught on camera, Dash Cam Diaries continues. You may think criminals with deadly weapons are the greatest danger police officers face on the beat. But traffic incidents can be as dangerous, if not more so. In our next story, officers on highway patrol find themselves in harm's way.
Come on, hurry! Hurry! Come on!
On an icy interstate, a car is crushed between a police vehicle and a careening tractor trailer.
I thought for sure that the driver of that car would have been seriously injured, if not killed.
February 13th, 2007. Officers Douglas Eagler and Bill Allen report for duty at the Erlanger, Kentucky Police Department. At 7 p.m., the night is already wet and icy.
When we started our shift, we had to use our flashlights to knock the ice off our overhead light bar. So we knew we were in for probably a long night.
Bad weather for drivers means hard and dangerous work for policemen on patrol. As the officers head north up Interstate 75, they're almost immediately dispatched to the scene of an accident.
Northbound 75 at the 184.4 mile marker for a report of a collision with injuries.
Officer Allen's dash cam is recording as they approach the accident site.
There was one vehicle that had struck the wall on the left-hand side of the road.
The officers pull over to check on the car and its occupants. They know they're in a risky position because of the slick roads.
Are you all right? I don't know how I made it through, officer. Okay.
Vehicles were having a tough time maneuvering around on the interstate.
But they're still taken by surprise at what happens next.
My vehicle, our police cruiser, was struck by another vehicle. It spun around and it was facing in the opposite direction.
They've been rear-ended. The crash shakes the dash cam, which briefly shuts off, but then restarts.
Our police car was facing oncoming traffic in the middle lane of the interstate.
Then the officers realize something much worse is on the way.
I saw an oncoming tractor trailer coming directly towards the scene of the collision that we were just involved in.
As they stare horrified at the behemoth bearing down on the cruiser, another driver on his evening commute has pulled up behind the pileup.
I thought I saw two headlights spinning in front of me, two different cars, and as I got closer and closer, I realized that it was two cars spinning, so I screeched on my brakes and came to a complete stop.
Ronald Powell Jr. has avoided an accident, but he's completely unaware of the approaching tractor trailer. Officer Eagler sees that the woman who has just rear-ended his patrol car is right in the path of the truck. The woman is off camera. If the officer doesn't get her out of harm's way, he's certain she will die.
I was yelling at her, come on, come on, come on, you need to get out of there.
Come on, hurry! Hurry, come on, come on!
I pulled her car door open and grabbed a hold of her, looking over my shoulder at the tractor trailer that was oncoming. And all I really had time to do was push her towards the retaining wall and threw her down on the ground.
It all happens in moments, and Powell, sitting in his car, becomes aware something is horribly wrong.
Why did they just jump out of the car like that? That's when I heard the air brake on the semi. It was like goo, 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 goo. And then that's when I felt the impact. I didn't see anything happen. I just felt it. I felt glass cutting my face.
Sheltered against the median wall, the officers are amazed to see the semi miraculously bounce safely past them.
I never thought the wheel of a semi would look that big as it went past us.
And you see from the video that the tractor trailer steers right, which causes the double tandem trailers to bounce off the wall and went right around us. Had that wall not been there, it would have taken out everybody around. It's just luck. Just luck.
The tractor trailer comes to a halt. In his crushed car, Ron Powell is stunned to find he's still alive.
I was over in the shoulder, facing the wrong way, facing the opposite way. And my face is bleeding really heavy, and I was like, what just happened?
The driver of the semi gets out of his truck and approaches Ron.
He was actually the first guy to my car. He's like, are you okay, man? He was like, yeah. I was like, I think so. He's like, man, I'm glad you're alive. I'm like, me too. I was like, me too.
Not until after the crash did the officers realize Ron Powell's car is there. It's completely mangled.
And everybody's running up to me with flashlights, and they were talking about potentially fatal on their intercoms. And I know what that means. So, I thought something was going on. I had to start touching myself. Like, okay, I can wiggle my toes. I can wiggle my fingers. Like, so I think I'm okay.
Emergency responders take one look at Ron's bloody face and assume the worst.
We're going to get these guys to help you get out. Okay?
But they're in for a surprise.
That firefighter guy had told me it's going to take like 10, 15 minutes to cut me out the car. And I asked him, can I just climb out the window? And he let me climb out the window, and then I turned around and looked at the car. It's like a giant just took it and squashed it frontwards and backwards.
Despite the violence of the crash, everyone's injuries are slight, even Ron Powell's.
After they wiped all the blood away, it was just superficial scratches. I'm pretty blessed and lucky to be able to walk away from something like that.
At the station afterwards, the woman who Officer Eagler saved gets her chance to thank him.
She just gave me a hug. That was a very neat moment.
As brief as it was, their miraculous escape from the violent crash made a lasting impression on everyone involved.
When I saw the videotape, I was, wow, how lucky am I?
I did break down and finally start crying and realizing that I could have been killed very easily, but, God still wanted me here for something.
Coming up, another officer makes a dramatic save, and an ambulance pulled over on the way to the hospital. When caught on camera, Dash Cam Diaries continue. Caught on camera, a heated argument between a state trooper and a paramedic on his way to the hospital with a patient. May 24th, 2009, dashcam video shows Oklahoma trooper Daniel Martin trying to pass an ambulance that is slow to let him by. The trooper scolds the driver over his radio. Paramedic Maurice White, caring for a patient in the ambulance, says his driver hasn't seen the trooper because he was driving in the ambulance's blind spot. A few minutes later, Trooper Martin pulls over the ambulance. What follows on the dashboard video is a bizarre encounter.
Here, now. No, you now. What's going on? No, I'm talking to the driver. No, I'm talking to you. I'm the medic. You better get back in that ambulance. I'm talking to the driver. I'm in charge of this unit, sir. Okay.
The trooper thinks that the ambulance driver, Paul Franks, gave him the finger earlier.
You don't need to give me no hand gestures now. I ain't going to put up with that. You understand me?
I know the character of Paul Franks. That's just something he wouldn't do.
Now, I won't put up with you talking to my driver like that. I ain't listening to you, buddy. You get your back in that ambulance or I'll take you in. I'm talking to the driver.
Paramedic White says he wouldn't let the trooper talk to his driver because he believed his patient would suffer from any delay. He tells the trooper about the patient, but the trooper persists.
We got a patient in this unit right now. Okay, you want to go ahead and pull over to the side of the road when there's an emergency vehicle behind you?
The logical thing to do would be to take it up at the hospital or take it up with us later. but he totally ignored my statement that we have a patient on board.
You better get back in that ambulance before you get your butt to jail now. You understand me?
We're going to get my patient to the hospital. You can take me to jail. We'll discuss this, okay?
Paramedic White refuses to back down. His patient has fainted in her home and has a history of heart trouble. Trooper Martin tries to put the paramedic in handcuffs. On the dash cam video, the patient's family starts to gather. They've been following the ambulance to the hospital. The patient's husband reminds the trooper that his wife is waiting in the ambulance, but the argument continues.
You are me. I'm you. Yes, you are. You turn around. You turn around now. Martin, calm down.
The trooper releases the paramedic and the crowd breaks up. Paramedic White returns to his ambulance where his patient is extremely distraught.
If you can imagine yourself, you're on a cot in an ambulance. You're basically helpless in that position, and you can hear your family members screaming. She was extremely upset.
What's worse, the confrontation's not over yet.
No, you can't go right now.
The patient's husband tries again to intervene.
My wife, she needs to be at the hospital. She wouldn't be in this. If he wouldn't have come out here and started, we could have been on the road about 5 minutes ago, partner. Now step back.
The driver tries his best to defuse the tense situation.
I'm sorry to see you coming to vehicle in front of me. Look, all I'm trying to do is over here and talk to you about it. All right? I didn't need your manager or whoever it is in the back and the paramedic, whoever happens to be in charge, to get out and start obstructing, okay? I understand. You understand? Yes, sir, I do.
Trooper Martin tells the driver that he plans to arrest the paramedic.
He's going to jail. Yeah, you don't jump out and talk to a state trooper like that. You understand me? I don't care who you are. You're not running code. You're not running emergency, okay? Right. All right, I didn't just get up behind you and tailgate you and turn on my red lights and siren. I've been going hot over here to help the county out. You understand?
Yes, sir, I do.
The video shows the ambulance wasn't running lights and sirens. White says that's because he didn't want to excite the patient. But now, that's a moot point. As a second officer arrives, the trooper goes to check on the patient, still having little idea about her condition.
Man, we're going to get you on to the hospital here just quickly, okay? Hey, you're going to jail, you understand me? You're under arrest. Okay, you are under arrest.
Once again, the situation gets heated. A family member's cell phone camera captures Trooper Martin attempting to restrain the paramedic. The paramedic shoves the trooper, and the patient starts to scream. Trooper Martin then places paramedic White in a chokehold. A few moments later, the trooper backs off.
I think maybe just having that second officer there helped bring Martin under control a little bit, enough that he could just have that moment of clarity to realize what he was doing was not in his best interest, my best interest, and most importantly, in the patient's best interest.
The trooper allows the ambulance to leave and follows it to the hospital. When they arrive, paramedic White checks in his patient, who's released later that day. The paramedic then turns himself in.
I went back outside to the second trooper on scene, and I told him that at this point, you can arrest me. I've released my patient care to the nurse.
But after everything that happened, White is never arrested. Trooper Martin did not respond to interview requests through his lawyer, but in a press conference, his lawyer says paramedic White delayed the patient by not letting Martin talk directly to driver Paul Franks.
The Trooper Martin's belief was if I could sit down and talk to Paul, that we could have ended this very quickly. Mr. White is trying to control the scene.
Paramedic White says the incident was a fluid situation, and in the heat of the moment, he did what he thought was right.
I did not deem it in the best interest of the patient to permit him to handcuff and arrest me at that time.
If we allow people to get out of vehicles and try to handle the traffic stop other than the driver, that's chaos.
The state of Oklahoma gives Trooper Martin a 5-day suspension and an order to report for an anger assessment. Paramedic White believes Trooper Martin may have offered an explanation for his behavior on the road that day, White refers to a conversation he says the two of them had outside the hospital after the incident.
He made the statement that, I don't know how we got to this point. We worked together before. And I simply said, I don't know how we got here either. And he said, well, I just recently came back from Iraq.
Trooper Martin had served in Iraq and returned just weeks before. Whatever the reason for the strange encounter, both the trooper and the paramedic won't soon forget the traffic stop that turned ugly. Coming up, an officer makes a last-second save. When caught on camera, Dash Cam Diaries continues. Welcome back to Caught on Camera. I'm Contessa Brewer. Even an ordinary day for police on patrol can turn into a life or death situation. And with dash cams rolling, officers can relive their most frightening moments. On a stretch of road, a police officer saves a young man's life while putting his own in jeopardy. It's a cold day in February 2010. Lieutenant John Lambert responds to a call near Cleveland, Ohio, where a teenager's car has hit a barrier after he lost control in the snow. Hello there. Lambert, a 22-year veteran of the force, is keeping a watchful eye for oncoming cars. While the teenager, Marius Trepchak, is getting his driver's license, Lieutenant Lambert appears to glance nervously down the road. A few seconds later, disaster strikes. An out-of-control vehicle crashes into Lambert and Trepchak, all caught on the lieutenant's dashboard camera. Unbelievably, Lambert is able to push the teenager out of harm's way.
I was positive I was dead because you just see a car flying at you going like 40 miles per hour, you think you're done.
Trepchak walks away from the collision, but Lambert's thrown over the guardrail, seriously injured. The woman who hit him, 30-year-old Catherine D'Agostino, calls 911. As other officers arrive on the scene, D'Agostino is beside herself. Trepchak consoles her as she waves an ambulance over to the scene. Lambert is carefully lifted out and taken to the hospital.
I realized that I am lucky to be alive.
Incredibly, Lieutenant Lambert survives the collision, but he's taken a beating. He has a fractured pelvis, tailbone, a broken left eye socket.
But he got fractures in this bone right here, as well as fractures in this bone.
In the days after the accident, doctors say the 42-year-old Lambert could face a year of physical rehabilitation.
I do not remember much from the accident itself, but the next thing I remember is waking up in the ambulance.
It's not unlike John to think of someone else first before he thought of himself.
Flash forward 7 months, and Lambert is much improved. At an awards ceremony covered by the local news, Lambert is out of his wheelchair and optimistic about his recovery.
My rehab's going good. I'm getting stronger every day. My therapist and my doctors are all happy with my progress.
Have you watched that videotape?
Yes, I have, and I'm surprised I survived it. It's pretty scary, actually, but still, as of today, I still have no recollection of the incident.
Lambert's difficult road to recovery is made easier by the generous spirit of his community.
I've had a lot of prayers from a lot of different people I don't even know, and I've gotten cards. I'm still getting cards today, and I'm just, I'm overwhelmed by the support that I've gotten from my family, friends, and the public.
Thank you, Lieutenant, for your pain and suffering, and also for saving a young man's life. Congratulations.
The stories revealed by the dashboard cameras in this hour give us a window into the extraordinary and scary situations officers face on a daily basis. I'm Contessa Brewer. That's all for this edition of Caught on Camera.